Do these events harm a community's quality of life and suppress economic development? By using big data for the social good, what if local policymakers, public administrators, and economic development officials had an app which allows them to gain insights about the characteristics of their community, set a baseline score for their community relative to other communities around the country, and have a yardstick to measure their progress? Data.gov is the front door to a collection of public data. For this app, I combine data from 3 different federal government departments. The first one is the Treasury Department. The data is maintained by the Internal Revenue Service, which collects migration data by tracking addresses from individual tax returns filed from one year to the next. The second data set is from Health and Human Services. The mortality data is based on all death certificates filed in the United States. It is maintained by the National Center for Health Statistics. The final data set is from the Department of Commerce. The American Community Survey is administered by the Census Bureau. It is an annual survey to track the characteristics of local communities. The data helps determine how $400 billion of federal and state funds are distributed each year. When I have data sets that I'm reviewing for the first time, I like to start with exploratory data analysis to see what's inside. With the IRS migration data, I ask, what communities had the largest migration outflows? Looking at the outliers, 2 popped out: New Orleans in 2005 and Los Angeles from 2004 to 2007. Over 195,000 people migrated out of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. But Los Angeles? And the total population outflows were 3 times that of New Orleans. Where did they go? The Great Los Angeles Exodus ended in 2008 at the start of the financial crisis. If you look at this plot of migration flows pre- and post-financial crisis, you can see population migration in the U.S. was stopped in its tracks. However, the hangover from the financial crisis was housing foreclosures. 4 out of the 5 hardest hit communities in the U.S. were a result of this huge population influx from the Los Angeles expats. Las Vegas, with 77,000 new residents from Los Angeles, 390,000 to Riverside and San Bernardino, 50,000 to Bakersfield, and 59,000 to Phoenix. I combined the migrations data set with the mortality data set by county starting at 2004 and up to 2010, which is the latest data from the Internal Revenue Service. The death rate is calculated by combining the total homicide and suicide counts by the per thousand county population. This is one of the quality of life metrics used to rank the communities. The county data came with a classification according to population size. Urban central metros held the largest population and rural the smallest. This box plot shows the death rate by metro classification. There's a common perception that urban areas have the highest rates of homicide and suicides. However, when you look at these events, it's the rural communities which stick out. Interesting. Up to now, this data looks at events in the past. How can you use it to make decisions for the future? The approach I use combines the death rate quality of life metric together with the net migration flow and ranks each of them on a percentile scale. I use those rankings and combine the data with the American Community Survey to understand the community's characteristics. With every data set, you need to understand its limitations and how those limitations affect your analysis. In the mortality data, only the counties with 10 or more combined homicides and suicides are reported due to privacy regulations. The American Community Survey is a sample of the population at a point in time. Many of the rural communities are excluded in the data sets because there is not enough people in those communities to come up with statistically valid sample estimates. In my exploratory data analysis, the higher rural death rates appeared intriguing. However, when you take into account the data limitations and the missing data around rural communities, this box plot, which shows rural communities to have the highest death rates, may be completely false. To what extent is this missing data affecting my analysis? This is where IBM Hadoop for analytics comes into play. My mortality analysis data is from the compressed mortality data set. The raw master mortality data is over 1 gigabyte with the personal and geographic data stripped. I used Big R to count the total number of homicides and suicides from the master mortality data set. I found 15% of these deaths excluded from my analysis data. I matched the geographic data with the master list of geographic codes to find 2,172 communities excluded, and 59% of them are rural. Now I have more insights into the data, including the key missing aspects. This interactive app uses a dashboard-style layout. It opens with bar charts featuring 2 groups. These are the floor and ceiling metrics. The top 10 percentile represents communities with the lowest homicide and suicide rates and the highest percentage of people moving into the community. The bottom 10 percentile has the highest homicide and suicide rates and the highest percentage of people fleeing the community. The community characteristics consist of 3 categories: workforce, socioeconomic, and behavioral. Each category features several characteristics. If you want to dive deeper, you can go to the data tables to view the data and sort it by the different variables. This app is intended for local policymakers, public officials, and economic development officials. It allows them to measure their community's quality of life with respect to other communities around the U.S. With customization, I foresee its best use is to set social and economic development goals. If a community is ranked in a certain decile group, it now knows what metrics it can set for achievable goals to rise to the next decile group and execute policy actions. With $400 billion of federal and state funds which are distributed to communities each year, this big data for social good app may give them a competitive advantage for their funding request.